Welcome to the Equipped Disciple channel. My name is Rick McClatchy. I will be your host. We are here to be and to make disciples of Jesus, and we do that through daily Devos, through Sunday sermons, and through other discipleship resources. We are here to equip you. All right, welcome into another day of your daily Devo. My name is Pastor Rick, and we are continuing our journey in John chapter 6. So I hope you are ready. We got Jesus walking on some water today. We got some disciples rowing their brains out to no avail. So let's just jump right in and check it out. Visit our friends and see what's going on with them. So John chapter 6, verses 16 through 21. So we're just crushing it today, getting a ton of verses knocked out. Not really, but so yeah, John chapter 6, verses 16 through 21, lost at sea. So let's jump on in. Verse 16, it says, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea. It's just an interesting, this is not necessarily like the Bible says, but just, when evening came, so it's the end of the day. It's getting dark, which the next verse will actually tell us. But and then it's an interesting thing when you see in the Bible people going down. So when Jonah was running away from the call of God, it says he went down to go to Tarshish. I think he went down to Joppa, whatever, to catch the boat to Tarshish. But it says that he went down, like he was going away from God, running away from God's presence, and the language that it uses that he went down. And so some people look at that a little bit like a literary device to indicate kind of a negative connotation on the action. So just an interesting little thought there. This is a real historical event that happened, and so I don't not trying to overly allegorize or whatever, but to draw principles out of it for our own lives, I think is important. And so, I mean, how many know that a lot of temptations, a lot of challenging, negative situations can happen when evening comes, when the end of the day, when you're tired, when you're worn out, when your guard is down. So just be paying attention to that dynamic, to that tendency. And then verse 17, it says, let's see here. Let's continue. They went down to the sea and got into a boat and started across the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in, but Jesus had not yet come to them. So they got into the boat and started across the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in. So darkness was already there, and Jesus hadn't yet come to them. They started across the sea of their own accord. Jesus hadn't come to them. And we have no record of Jesus telling them to go anywhere. So, Jesus, to refresh your memory, in case you forgot from yesterday, Jesus withdrew by himself because they were there after he fed the 5,000. They were going to crown him king, but it was not yet his time. The crowd was, they were like, "Wow, this guy's amazing. He needs to be the king," but Jesus was like, "Nope, not my time. This is not going to happen." And so he slipped away from the crowd, and he went and withdrew by himself to pray. Spend time with the Father. And so there are the disciples hanging out, and it's like, well, why did you leave without Jesus? Darkness had set in and Jesus had not yet come to them. What are you thinking? And I'd like to ask myself that question when darkness has set in and I get taken off on my own and just going my own way, and Jesus hasn't yet come with me. What am I thinking? What am I doing? What is my problem? And then a high wind arose and the sea began to churn. And I just started to think about how, That's the things that are above them and the things that are below them are, there's challenges on every side. It's like, isn't that isn't that just the way it happens? You set out on your own. You haven't waited for Jesus. You get out there, and next thing you know, the things above you are garbage and the things below you are garbage. And it's just like what we call a regular old dumpster fire, that happens in our lives, and we just can't figure out, why is it going wrong? And it's like, well, darkness had set in and Jesus hadn't yet come to you. And you went out and did your own thing. And then a high wind arose and the sea began to churn. Challenges on every side. And then after they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the water. He was coming near the boat and they were afraid. So first of all, I'm like, 3 or 4 miles, that's a lot of rowing. Especially, if the sea is churning. Goodness gracious. They must have been tired. They must have been whooped by this. And Jesus came to them walking on the water. I like how it just nonchalantly says it. He just was coming near the boat, Jesus walking on the water, walking on the sea, the churning sea, the crazy, high winds and churning sea. So sometimes we picture in our minds like a calm sea, and Jesus is just like pit pat, walking across the water. It's like, no, he was like walking on a churning sea. That's extra crazy. There were no secret stones, in the water that he was walking on. This was not a parlor trick, Jesus was actually walking on the water. Again, another one of the signs that John is bringing out to show the deity of Christ, that he is God, that he is above creation, that he is greater than. So now they tired, they've been rowing for 3 or 4 miles, saw Jesus walking on the sea. He was coming near the boat and they were afraid. And so Jesus simply says to them, "It is I. Don't be afraid. It is I. Don't be afraid." Now, he just said who he is, and it's who he is, not who he was, because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Because he's alive today. My gut reaction was to write this slide to say he said who he was. No, he said who he is. He says, "It's me. Hi, it's me." He said who he is. Don't be afraid. Before he did anything for them, Jesus actually he was communicating to them, who I am is enough. Who I am is enough for you to lay your fears aside, regardless of the high winds and regardless of the churning sea. It's me. Hi. It's me. Don't be afraid. And we know, looking back on all this, that a big part of this journey is them getting to know who Jesus is, right? Because we have the whole Bible to learn who Jesus is. They didn't have that yet. They're getting to know him the old-fashioned way of just hanging out with him, following him, talking to him. And so he said who he is. Don't be afraid. And he had not done anything for them yet. And then they were willing to take him on board. And at once, the boat was at the shore where they were heading. So, an interesting point. Okay, just something I want to throw out at you. I looked up the best understanding of what their route was. And so this was their route for this trip. Excuse me. And I mean, if you take this little measuring stick here and you put it over here, maybe it's 3 or 4 miles, but maybe they spent some time rowing around in circles. Maybe the storm caused them to kind of root, going around and around. And again, just something I was thinking about, like, we need to let Jesus take the wheel. That's what it says in the Bible. Jesus take the wheel. No, that's not true. It doesn't actually say that in the Bible. No, principally it's okay. Surrendering to Jesus, let Jesus have control. So just an interesting little thought, 3 or 4 miles they rode and they got real tired. Wait for Jesus. Wait for Jesus. That seems to be, to me, like the resounding principle for today. Wait for Jesus. Don't get started out on your own. Don't get in a hurry. Be with Jesus, because wherever he is, fear can't reign. And when Jesus is there, you get where you're going. You get to your destination. Because I love it, because he's like, let's see, the verse says, and at once, so they were willing to take him on board, and at once the boat was at the shore where they were heading. Like, what? It sounds like a magic trick, like Jesus gets in the boat and boop, there they are. It's like, okay. But if that's how it is, you let Jesus into your boat, you get where you're going, let him into your boat, take him with you, or better, wait for him to tell you where to go. There's another record of a traveling through a storm, but when they started out, Jesus was in the boat with them and said, hey, let's go to the other side. So that was a whole nother ball game, right? That's not necessarily learning who Jesus is, but a matter of obeying, listening and obeying, having faith in what he says. In this particular one, wait for Jesus and get to know Jesus so that you aren't afraid, because Jesus said, "It is I. Don't be afraid." Do you know enough about Jesus? Are you familiar enough with him that when he shows up, you don't have to be afraid, no matter what the situation? I mean, I think that's easy for the easier things in life, but when things get real crazy and you've got high winds above you and you've got churning sea below you and you're losing your entire point of reference to the degree where maybe you're rowing around in circles, potentially. Like, do you know Jesus well enough for him to bring peace to you in the midst of those kinds of situations? That's where we want to be, because that puts us in a place of like an indestructible faith. When we love and we know Jesus like that, that's a good place to be. So let's wait for Jesus. Let's be with Jesus. Let's know Jesus. I think that's like the key here, right? Like, Jesus came to reveal himself to us. Emmanuel, God with us. The God of all peace, the God of all comfort, the God of all hope. He is here with you. Do not be afraid. With that, a big hearty God bless you today. Have a great one, and I will see you tomorrow.